guys know we're doing this press conference style. We're doing this old school, so we want to get as many of your questions in as we can. So let's just get the questions rolling.
Hi, I'm Julia from Nerds and Beyond. My question is for you directly. So a lot of your work, whether you star in it or not, you always bring a little South Asian culture to it, just beyond a character's physical appearance. So I was wondering, how do you hope to bring that to Velma?
Well, she has an Indian family, and I don't know, I love this opportunity I have now to be able to have representation of Indian Americans, like modern Indian American teens, and we've done it in a couple other shows, and Charlie obviously has written with me before, and we just thought it was such a great opportunity. And at the beginning, I identify so much with the Velma character, and I think she's a character where, I don't know, her ethnicity in the original series wasn't.
Yeah, the whiteness of the characters was not, it didn't feel integral to them, except Fred, as we Fred. Fred just felt like a very white person. So,
Fred had to be white.
Had to be white. But
He's the whitest character in the history of Velma.
Yeah, but when Mindy came to me and said, I want to do this, you connected with the character saying, here's this girl who's sort of the smart one, does all of the work, doesn't get nearly enough credit. So you connected on that level. So then when we got glasses, got the sort of short hair, yeah. So as we got down, it wasn't really until we got much farther down the road where it looked like, this might happen, that we really started to talk about how the character should look and should they be South Asian. And at the time it was just like, well, why wouldn't they be in this day and age? And so we really...
And when I knew that I was going to do the voice and it's animation, the possibilities of animation are so big, it's like, well, why not make the character Indian? We've been so inspired by Into the Spider-Verse and seeing these other characters that can embody the spirit of these iconic franchises. And we're like, well, why don't we try that? We love Scooby-Doo so much, and we're going to honor it. So, kind of a long-winded way to answer your very concise question.
Thank you.
Are we calling? Oh, yeah, okay.
Hi, I was wondering, was the series always adult-oriented in nature, and was that a specific appeal to you as opposed to doing a Velma-centric, more kids-centered series?
Yeah, sure. So we always wanted to do as adult animation, and for me, I loved Scooby-Doo as a kid, but it also scared me. I was scared very easily, but I was interested in kind of taking the comedy and the humor of the original and sort of adapting it for older, trying to make it sort of harder jokes and scarier as well.
That appealed to me also, is this idea. It's such an amazing series, the original series in 1969, we love it, and we've loved what people have done with their own versions of it with their own movies, and we thought this was a really interesting, fun way to make a different choice, and it felt worth doing because it hadn't been done before.
Sophia Soto with the Nerds of Color and both of you, and I want to start by asking, what was your relationship like with the franchise? Obviously, Scooby-Doo's iconic character, and what made you want to do something centered around her rather than another remake for adults of the
First of all, love the name of your site. Thank you. That's what I love you here. Identify too much with the name of your site, and I think Charlie said this, but I just there is not a lot of obviously zero representation of Indian American girls of color, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s animation. Not a lot. And so what I loved about that character, she's the closest to what I can see. Smart, A student, thick glasses that are always falling off, and skeptical, and she has a lot of these amazing qualities. So as a kid, watching the reruns at that point of the original Scooby-Doo, I felt like, man, I really identify with this character. I love that she exists. She's not traditionally gorgeous or anything. She just helps the gang out because she's so smart. And when I joined Warner Brothers and they had access to all the Hanna-Barbera canon, it was I was instantly drawn to that, and so was Charlie.
Thank you so much.
The white sweater.
Hi, Master with Starry Mag. Did being a mom influence the way you approached her character in any way?
What a good question. Well, Charlie is the showrunner and creator of the show. Honestly, I approached it because it's not for kids. I do like doing shows where there's Indian characters in it, and we show Indian families and not the sort of traditional ways we've seen them in the past. But it's not for kids, but I hope maybe when my daughters...
Yeah,
in college.
Yeah, right. Yeah. She'll
When you
enjoy
guys see it, you'll understand.
Yeah, but I have kids, and I really did. I'm very interested in the family dynamics, and just again, because for me, one of the big mysteries of Scooby-Doo, the original, is how did these four very different people come together? Like, what really drew them together, and what sort of kicked it off, and how they were made by their parents, and that's such a trope in teen dramas, especially today, as sort of teens paying for the sins of their parents. And so I really wanted to kind of fold that into this series as well.
And we're so lucky because we have this amazing guest star cast who play all the different parents. People like Wanda Sykes, Cherry Jones, and they're playing Fred, Daphne's, and Russell Peters is playing Amon, who is
Your father.
Velma's father, and he's just so funny. And we actually haven't gotten to see that dynamic, like Indian dad, like Indian American dad, and Indian daughter. So that is just, it's really fun to show those dynamics.
Just for note, that casting information is embargoed till 11 a.m. Or 2 p.m. today. So
Sorry.
right here.
Sorry.
No, it's coming out today, but just.
I know.
So you both have kids. I mean, even though this is more of an adult-centered show, have you shown the originals to them to get an idea of how they would react? Because kids, they are more savvy, I think, than we were about a lot of things.
Yes.
Did you use them sort of as a petri dish? This could work. Or what doesn't.
I tried to get my kids to watch, because when we started doing this, I went back and rewatched I kind of tried to stay true to the very original Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And so I went back and watched a bunch of those. They don't move as quickly as you remember moving. Like for kids today, as you're saying, kids being much more savvy and sort of used to kind of doom scrolling and things changing, they're much moodier. And so I couldn't get my kids as hooked on the reference material as I would have liked, but definitely thought about them in terms of references and making the show feel modern, like these kids are modern teens. And
My
we've done it for them.
daughter loves it. I think she loves the animation style, and so it's such beautiful work. I mean, it's from 1969, but it's still so beautiful.
It does look good,
The iconic colors. I mean, I think a lot of kids' animation now is they don't have different maybe priorities. I guess it's like and so my daughter absolutely loves it. She's 4, so a lot of it is over her head, and some stuff is actually scary for her. But I always tell her like Velma, that you're skeptical. This isn't really like ghouls. It's always like a corrupt businessman who's like trying to get money.
But can you be scarier with this since you're going for an older audience?
We certainly try. I wanted to lean in when we were talking about the animation style. We wanted to evolve it in a way that would, help really do a more modern twist on the horror aspect of it.
I'm gonna go way in the back with the blue shirt on.
So with this being like adult themes, what kind of crimes will we see? And will there be just in like typical Scooby-Doo fashion, like cameos?
Sure. I think what you asked was what kind of crimes we'll be seeing, and I think I missed the second half.
The second part was like in like typical Scooby-Doo fashion, will there be like unveilings of like cameos?
Oh, that's a great question. So this is a scary show with murders, and I think that was one of the things we liked about it was these high school kids being really brave and having to deal with something very scary, and that's something I think we've been inspired with a lot of more scary teen shows of late, which is why the show is for adults. And it's also tackling a lot of what teens go through in modern high school life. Obviously, I come from that sort of tradition with some of my other shows, and that was really interesting to me internally. Like, what do girls deal with? It deals with like popularity, being an outsider. Obviously, the cast, comes from very different socioeconomic backgrounds. The characters do. So, like, what does that look like now? And that's something that we could kind of only tackle in an adult show, but it seemed really interesting and rich.
And in terms of the crimes being a little bit more intense too, it just felt, again, another question I always had about the original was every week in the original, they are chased by, seemingly monsters, but criminals. It feels like their life is in danger every single week. And yet week in, week out, they keep doing it, and it's seemingly for free. So it was sort of like, what did they go through in high school that was so bad that kind of pushed them to want to do that? So we just, we really kind of amped up the suspense and fear level of the crimes that they're investigating.
With the more adult-oriented show, we see Velma has changes as well. With other characters, we see changes in them from the traditional. We learn more adult things that's more violent. We're gonna learn like Scooby snacks for edibles or something.
I mean, the fun of the show has really been taking, the iconic pieces, either the sayings or the sweater or whatnot, and trying to give origins to all of those, everything that really are the iconic pieces of Scooby-Doo, and imbue them with meaning. And so when Velma, why does Velma say jinkies? Like that's a big thing that we wanted to lean into. And we did the same with all the characters. Like how does, we call him Norval in our series. Well, when does he become Shaggy? That's one of the real appealing things of doing this project.
Right, you wave that, yes, blue shirt. All right.
With it being marketed as an adult animation show, does that really open up the storytelling for like comedy that you couldn't do with other shows like live action?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly adult, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's like the most adult show that you've ever seen. I don't think we wanted to be respectful to the IP. We didn't want to say, look what we can do with these people, and kind of put them in what might be a little uncomfortable, where you're going to be like, I don't know if I want to see Velma or Norval or Fred doing that. But it's certainly, I think, in the way we were able to tell stories and what we were able to tell stories about, that a little bit off mystery, just delve more into the mysteries of high school life. Yes.
For instance, like we don't really have the characters, they don't like swear that much.
No, not really.
So it's really just like the situations that they're in, because it's geared towards adults, can be more of like, what do teens who are, 15, 16, 17, like, what are those sort of urges, which you couldn't have in a show that was for younger kids. And also the kind of like references and the things that are going on, whether it's like pop culture and, Charlie is so good and the writing staff is so good at pulling from those things. And I think that's really where it shines. But it's not like we wanted to like
shock you with what we were making these characters do. That wasn't ever the MO.
Yes.
So you gave her, Velma has actually been a major news story this week. She has her first openly female love interest. Just a testament to the franchise that can be reinterpreted in so many different ways. She can be gay, straight, bisexual. So I'm curious if you talk about how much of Velma specifically in her romantic life, sexuality be explored, but any other LGBTQ characters?
Well, so we'll start. Yes, we're very aware of the story, and I think it's just great that you can tell these stories about Velma that have been talked about forever, but now you can actually address them in all the different iterations of Velma. Without giving away. We don't want to give away like any spoilers about that episode.
Her self-discovery is a really big part of this series.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest, I think, appeals to Charlie and I about doing this is when we started working on the show and Charlie started writing the first script, it was like, that's a big part of it. We don't want to ignore it. It's what's interesting to people. She's an icon for young gay women, and I think that's really interesting to us. So her figuring it out is a big part of the show and why it's really fun to do.
Okay. So how would you compare the show? Like, for example, like, does it have like a Harley Quinn HBO Max feel, or like an X-Files but animated type feel?
Ooh, X-Files but animated is good. I'll say the mysteries are chilling in this. And, I've never even told you this, but like, when I think of like Veronica Mars, which again is another amazing show about like real mysteries with real stakes, it reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn is a show, we love that show. We're big fans of the writers on that show. I think even that is more adult. It's like such an awesome show. It's super raunchy and really cleverly written. I think our show is less, adult than that show. But again, Harley Quinn is a very different kind of character than Velma, so it seems...
I'd say it splits the difference between those two references that you meet, Harley Quinn and sort of animated X-Files.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any reference to X-Files, what a great show.
So the original Scooby-Doo, while very scary, was also really funny, but within the chaos that kind of happened. So I wanted to know, do you guys kind of follow those same beats with the comedy, or where do you find those more lighter moments?
First off, your shirt is the best shirt. Thank you. All right, Willem Dafoe is like, he's the best. Yeah, that's an excellent truth. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think we certainly try to, there are times where we make a real specific nods to the kind of slapstick humor of the original. And then I think the writing style in terms of the banter between the characters is perhaps a little bit more, definitely more heightened than it was in the original, more in keeping with how we write on a lot of your shows.
Yeah.
But we certainly tried to make it, as a kid I thought Scooby-Doo was hilarious and scary, so I wanted to create a version that adult Charlie would think is both hilarious and scary.
Hey, oh. Hey. Keep hearing the word adult-oriented Scooby-Doo, right? So does this mean like when we unmask the villains now, it's like college debt and midlife crisis now?
It would be a good idea. I mean, we do lean into I think we do explore, and especially now we just are finishing writing season 2, and we kind of get into some larger ideas like that as we go on in the
Hey,
season.
are we allowed to say that we're writing
Yes,
season
that's
seven?
All right.
It's wildly successful. Hey, we're bad at this.
Yeah. We should go.
We should go.
Velma was so awesome that it got renewed before the premiere.
Yeah, we're.
Yeah, but to answer your questions,
Please
no, I
keep
think
that a
there's
secret.
Where were we? Yeah, so to answer your question, it was, no, I think that we don't, it's more, I think it's just the level of the crimes are more brutal, and you'll see that in the premiere.
How do you balance bringing issues that teens are facing now into a prequel that show that started in the 60s?
Creative license. I mean, you just, we thought about it, should it be a period piece? Should we throw it in the 60s and early 70s? And I think we just decided that we, kind of taking a nod from Riverdale and all the great Brilliante shows, just setting it now as if it's happening now.
I remember when Netflix wanted to do Never Have I Ever, and I showed they wanted it to be set in the 80s and 90s because that's when I grew up. And there was just something about, we were really committed to having a staff that was super diverse and young, and we kind of wanted to reflect that experience now, and it also felt like it would make it less like a facsimile of the original version. And it was a fun challenge, like to have them, they have cell phones now, it's diverse, and people come from different backgrounds, and I think that helped us make that transition, was by modernizing it, which was Charlie's decision.
Hi, David Mann. Velma's had very different iterations, different personality quirks. What unique traits of her personality do you bring into the show?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
I think so they're younger, right? It's an origin story. So I feel this Velma is a little bit more skeptical. I think she's a little rougher around the edges. I think she really is starting as a real outsider at school and is just kind of attacking, hypocrisies around her a little bit more pointedly. I think her home life is not great, and so she's a little bit more, I don't want to say angsty in that she's dark and brooding, but she certainly is very free-flowing with her comments and judgments about other people and what's going on.
That's an incredible outfit.
Thank you.
You look amazing.
The shorts got real short when I sat down. And so I was feeling self-conscious, so thank you for saying that.
Is a South Asian woman, and between the sex lives of college girls and Never Have I Ever, you've really shown South Asian women in a different light than I think we've seen before in television.
Sure. I'm going to say thank you, although I don't know if different light is necessarily possible. But thank you. I love the projects that I've been able to work with. I love being able to take these characters that were on the periphery and make them front and center. I've just been so lucky that we have partners in HBO Max that are really excited. Not everyone would necessarily feel comfortable doing this, and we feel so lucky that Warner Brothers Animation was open to this. And again, we've seen it done in other shows, so I'm psyched that we get to do it with young Indian women. Thank you.
Both of you have worked
together on projects in the past. Did it feel good to like collaborate again on this project?
I can only speak for me. Yeah, it's great. I mean, working with Mindy, I've really worked with you since even The Office, and it's been the highlight of my career. It's just such a joy to write for Mindy, to write with Mindy, to come up with ideas, and it's incredible.
It's so fun to, well, I've seen Charlie in person in the past 3 years 4 times.
Yeah, it's been
So,
a lot of Zooms.
A lot of Zooms, but to have somebody who so gets my voice and to be able to do these long recording sessions with him. I mean, he has such an amazing pedigree before he even did The Office, where he was like a star writer. He was on The Daily Show and then Saturday Night Live forever. So Charlie is just like one of these rare people where he's such a hard joke writer, but then also, I mean, I think honestly just gets the female psyche and knows how to write for women. I think a lot of it is because you have a daughter and a wife and you have such a great relationship with them, but it was such a dream that he was excited to do the show. So I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed, I
Whoa.
just said. What am I saying?
I feel you just got it back on track. Yeah.
Mindy, how did your voice work on previous shows and films like Monsters at Work prepare you for Velma?
I was honestly excited because this was the first time where I wasn't playing a creature. In Monsters at Work, I play a creature. Inside Out, I'm playing another creature in emotion. So it was great to be playing a young woman, and it was kind of nice to get direction from Charlie, to make sure this didn't sound like Mindy Lahiri. It doesn't sound like Kelly from The Office, like try to do something else. So that was a kind of unique challenge for me. And I hate challenges. So it was great to be able to do that.
So we're gonna have one more question, then we're gonna have photo calls so you guys can take pictures and have our photographer come up. And I have to reiterate the information that was given today.
Yeah, it's on me.
Please, that is nothing is confirmed. So please, thank you. So last question.
So over the last couple of years, we had never have I ever we see a mother-daughter South Asian relationship. Miss Marvel in recent years with Disney, really good father-daughter relationship in that. What can we expect from Velma? I think you said Russell Peters is playing your father, so funny man. But what's that relationship like? We usually tend to see some sort of struggle with Salvation children and their parents.
Well, honestly, and I'll let Charlie speak to this more, because he was obviously the writer, but I would just say I've been able to show these mother, even grandmother, teenager dynamics in a lot of my shows that are Indian American, and I was so excited that that her primary parent, and there's some fun mystery around that, so I won't say too much else, is her father. And the father doesn't have an accent. He was like born and raised in the United States, and that's a dynamic I haven't seen before. And it's one of my favorite things in the show. He's such a gifted comedian, but I think we're now getting to the point where, like, I'm old as hell, but there are people here, Indian Americans whose parents are Indian Americans. We wanted to reflect, like, really what's happening now. We've seen the trope of the, like, and it's not necessarily a trope, it's like my experience, long experience, a lot of other people in their 30s and 40s of having immigrant parents, and the clash between that, but we haven't seen this music, and so that's really exciting.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun to write. I mean, what's great about Russell is he has such a light touch and he has such a great voice that he can be very gruff and stern and just kind of rolls his eyes at Velma a lot. But it comes across as sweet and endearing. It really is, and so that's a great dynamic to play.
And we don't fall into this trope where he's like, you have to be a doctor. Like, they're
Yeah,
just
no,
trying to get by. They're not from like a wealthy family. They're just it's just a unique dynamic that I'm so proud we get to tell.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Those of you, I know there's a few